Hello again, everybody. My name is Percival, also known as Scuff Gaming here on YouTube, and welcome to my Road to B-Side post-game analysis. In this video, I'd like to go over a few details about how I thought that the series went and critically discuss the strategies utilized in the video. For those who don't know or haven't watched the series, the Road to B-Side videos were inspired by many other game series like it on YouTube, such as Road to Grand Master videos for Overwatch, for example. This series was a little less ambitious, as I do work a regular day job and am quite honestly flying by the seat of my pants here in many ways. That being said, I have played a lot, and I mean a lot, of The Binding of Isaac, and I thought it would be interesting content for me to boot up a new save file and go, start to finish, through every character in the game's ascent to B-Side, including whatever unlocks were most necessary to complete the task. The purpose of the challenge was to provide viewers with an example save file and accompanying runs to illustrate how long it might take to set oneself up for full completion. This video aims to discuss what went well, and where a reasonable player might go from the end of our series if they wanted to achieve Dead God. So let's start with Chapter 1, Base Character Unlocks. There was a roadmap I stuck to from the very beginning of the series. Obviously, unlocking every base playable character was the initial goal, and generally, this was not that difficult to achieve. Skilled hard mode players will have a run inevitably that features enough HP to unlock Magdalene, enough money to unlock Cain, and enough Mom's Heart kills for Blue Baby, a single Satan kill for Judas, and a handful of unlocks could be easily done with optimal play and sustaining very little damage. For example, Samson, Eden, Lazarus, Apollyon, and Bethany can all be unlocked, for example, by simply playing well and defeating Mega Satan at the end of even a single run. During our runs, it was crucial to simultaneously pay attention to these unlock requirements, while simultaneously donating to our store donation machine and trying to maximize how far we could potentially get a run. In the very first few runs, for example, the player will instantly get an ending for defeating Mom and will proceed to get regular endings for defeating Mom's Heart after unlocking the womb. However, there are ways to push beyond the womb, such as utilizing sacrifice rooms or qualifying for the first devil deal, which would allow the player to go to Sheol or even the Dark Room, which we did. While this doesn't always increase how close the player can get to unlocking more characters, it will give players access to more powerful items and fast-track access to endgame areas like the Cathedral, the Chest, Sheol, and the Dark Room in the future. Apollyon, for example, requires a Mega Satan kill, which requires the angel statues to be activated, which requires the player to beat either the Chest or the Dark Room. In our Road to B-Side videos, we had access to the angel statues within the first 5 runs because we had pushed them all the way to the Lamb via my personal favorite, the Sacrifice Room. Of course, this was predicated on my personal ability to complete the Lamb fight and defeat all the Darkroom nasties, but most players with some level of experience and know-how, as well as a few choice Angel Room items, should be able to do the very same thing. Now, before we go any further, I wanted to briefly define the difference between what I described to be real HP versus implied HP. Real HP, as you might imagine, is HP that appears in your UI. Red hearts, soul hearts, bone hearts, characters that can give you real HP are allowed to have these types of health. Implied HP exists in the form of coin hearts, holy mantle charges, holy cards, and in my opinion the health represented by extra lives. A great way to imagine this interaction is by visualizing character A, who has 5 red heart containers, versus character B, the Lost, who has the holy mantle. It's easy to dismiss the Lost as having 0 health, but in my experience this is incorrect. In a lot of ways, it is quite possible for the Lost to spend around 12 hearts worth of damage because they are allowed to take damage once per room. In addition to this, the Lost is able to purchase devil deals without losing any HP at all, whereas characters with real HP are somewhat more limited in this regard. The Keeper and Tainted Keeper can also take as many deals as they can afford with the money they have, and take as many hits per room as they can pick up coins. This doesn't make these characters less challenging, of course, but it does curb the need for the HP they cannot have. In this series, the most difficult base characters to unlock were the Keeper, the Lost, the Forgotten, and Jacob and Esau. The Keeper simply required us to spend a great deal of time donating to the greed donation machine in greed mode. While this did make for a nice shakeup of the existing vanilla run formula, the truth is that necessity mostly lies in unlocking the holy mantle for the Lost, without which most players will struggle to utilize the original Lost to his true potential. There are a few other worthwhile unlocks associated with greed mode, which means our runs were more or less strictly to provide coins to the greed donation machine and nothing else. You may have noticed that I cycled through characters during this process, and this was for 2 reasons. To both get to the greed mode unlocks of these characters, but also to prevent early jamming on the greed machine, which jams more often if the same character is used. The Forgotten is a simple matter of executing a challenge based on players' ability to consistently dodge danger until the womb, and, of course, during the boss rush. Beating the first baseman in under a minute, while challenging in and of itself, is not the most challenging when given the option to play as Azazel, who begins with flying, increases speed, and the short-range brimstone beam. The true difficulty in this challenge is in juggling the use of Mom's shovel handle when it matters, and dodging random stomps between rooms. In addition, the player will need to avoid mom stomps while performing boss rush, which, unless the player is accustomed to doing runs quickly, may struggle with. After doing this, however, the player should more or less be safe-ish until they reach Shoal and the dark room, during which they may struggle. Obviously we did. We were killed by the lamb after unlocking the character. Jacob and Esau are unlocked by defeating Mother, as in Corpse Mother, Alt Path Mother. The only way to make this happen is to unlock Alt Path, which requires defeating Hush 3 times, which requires defeating Mom's Heart 10 times. This progression naturally occurs when players become more adept at the game. You will inevitably defeat Mom 10 times, and Mom's Heart 10 times. As unlikely as it may seem from the beginning of your experience, believe me when I say you will go from dreading the Mom's Heart fight to finding it a cakewalk for characters with actual HP. Obviously, the Keeper and the Lost still find It Lives to be fairly nerve-wracking. Defeating Mother with Jacob and Esau was going to be difficult unless we get bailed out by the game a little, and we did. While Alt Path is difficult, with enough practice you will find it is perfectly survivable for most characters with real HP, and Jacob and Esau are no exception. And finally, the elephant in the room. Unlocking the Lost was far more difficult than I thought it ought to have been. We spent a pretty good number of runs simply trying to break the game and obtain the missing poster trinket, from which we tried to off ourselves in the sacrifice room. Fairly early in our runs we had the opportunity to perform this exact task, but we elected instead to take this particular run to its natural conclusion. If I were to do this challenge again, I certainly would have instead used the sacrifice room during that early run and unlocked the Lost immediately. It took us an unnecessary number of Cain and Lazarus runs to achieve the virtually one thing that prevented us from moving towards the set runs for our tainted characters. This would have probably saved us 10 or so runs, which is a significant chunk of additional time we did not necessarily need to spend on Cain or Lazarus. The reason I chose Cain specifically was because his increased luck stat increases the chance for room clear rewards, including trinkets, and the Luckfoot starting item increases the chance for slot machine payouts. On several occasions we had a great deal of slot machine payouts in the form of trinkets, but either didn't see the missing poster or didn't get an accompanying sacrifice room, which was exceedingly unlucky. My advice to players trying to finish their save files is, if you have the chance to unlock the Lost, you totally should. It apparently takes a lot of runs to force the unlock, so just take the first chance you have to get it done. Chapter 2, The Ascension. Fortunately for us, after we unlocked every base character, it was relatively smooth sailing for our Ascent runs. We did a good amount of build up behind the scenes to make sure our base characters had the proper unlocks to make earnest Ascension attempts. For example, we had obviously filled the donation machine enough to get to the Holy Mantle for the Lost, and we had previously done a Keeper run which both A, resulted in a Hush kill, giving us a third of the Alt Path unlock, and B, unlocked the third coin HP for the Keeper, also by defeating Hush, greatly increasing our implied HP for future Keeper runs. There were some additional unlocks I considered pushing for if any of our Ascent runs ended up feeling too difficult, specifically Jacob and Esau, the Lost, and the Keeper. Most of the characters I was fairly confident I could complete during their first or second attempt, and much to my surprise, every single Ascent run resulted in victory, including Jacob and Esau and the Lost, unless you consider that one Jacob and Esau restart, but we're not talking about that. If I were a weaker player and I wanted to further lean my Ascent runs towards victory, I would suggest completing challenges 2, 4, 9, 14, and possibly 17. Not only to pad out the existing good item pool, but also to introduce some runes that might be particularly helpful towards all runs. Eventually, every player aiming to complete Dead God will have to beat all challenges, but these 5, SMB Superfan, Jera, Degaz, Death's Touch, Chaos Card, I have found to be very useful for finishing runs on difficult characters. Some footage of these challenges is being played right now. If I had to give players tips about how to navigate the lead up to the Ascent and the subsequent boss fights, I would say the following. Remember that you will be revisiting your item rooms on the way back up. This means that if you entered Alt Path at any point in time, unadvisable but just go with it, the blind items would be revealed to the player on the way back up. This includes the mandatory half-blind item during the Ascent, Mausoleum, or Gehenna. Every Ascent run will feature at least one floor of Mausoleum or Gehenna. Speaking of which, players who are not accustomed to Mausoleum or Gehenna will probably struggle the first couple of times they encounter the floor, but don't panic. Damage dealt to the character will not be doubled until you actually begin ascending back to home. You will encounter more difficult mobs such as purple splitting globins, blood cultists, deacons, whippers, and other nasty mobs. In Gehenna in particular, there are some profoundly annoying trap rooms featuring rotating mace heads and spike bricks. The good news is that you will not fight a boss on this floor. Instead, you will get Dad's Note, which will send you home. If you have an Emperor card and you want to skip it, skip it. Consider skipping an item room or two on your way down so that you can increase your chance for planetarium. Remember that your free item rooms can be revisited on the way back home, which means you can give yourself a free increase in planetarium chance as long as you are powerful enough to go through a floor or two without the item room visit. I sometimes go as far as to skip every item room on the way down if I happen to get particularly strong devil deals or boss items. There's no reason not to at least delay opening the item room until the end of a floor to gauge your strength going into the following floor. Be cautious about ignoring devil deals in favor of angel deals. If you elect to do this, and this is just general advice, keep in mind that you only have until the end of depths to gain access to your deals. Which means if you ignore the devil deal, your chance for an angel room are 33% in caves 1. If missed, 67% in caves 2, and then finally 100% in depths 1. There's definitely a strong chance that you could be choosing between 2 or more devil deals and a single angel deal, either of which may simply contain soul hearts, black hearts, and no deals are offered in Mausoleum of Gehenna, so you're not fighting a boss in that chapter. As early as you can in your run, leave a trinket in an item room or a boss room, so you can get a cracked key piece on the way back up. Sometimes players forget to do this, and they miss out on unlocking their character's tainted counterpart. In fact, this almost happened during our series, and it's a heartbreaking waste of time when it happens. During your ascension, you will encounter tougher enemy variations than you might be used to seeing. These tainted enemies usually have a ridiculous amount of HP, and worse, they have boss armor. However, unlike other late game chapters, players have the option to bomb through the ascension doors, and avoid difficult double wide or ultra narrow rooms they don't wish to play. I advise avoiding the mobs you find the most difficult. For characters without red HP, there's always a bedroom present when you reach home. Players who are creative with their deals can reach home without red HP and force the game to pay out with 3 soul hearts upon arrival. There's only one way to get used to the Dogma fight, and unfortunately that's to play it. Dogma has 2 phases, the first of which is tethered to the television that spawned it. The television takes damage in this phase, and Dogma does not. Dogma's Brimstone Beam can only begin in cardinal directions, that is, it's north, south, east, and west. Standing diagonally from Dogma fully avoids this attack. Dogma's Godhead-style static volley only deals damage if players remain in the aura long enough. Most players instead will struggle with the boss's final phase, during which they fear the dreaded Beyblade attack. Players will have to swing back and forth between the top half of the boss arena while dodging the silver feathers fired by Dogma. Make no mistake, this attack is not a fun one to dodge. It is very likely that you'll get hit a few times by this particular attack before figuring it out, but that's okay. It's just a matter of getting used to the encounter and managing the most difficult attacks to dodge. Against the Ultra Harbingers and the Beast, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is, every player will receive the Dogma passive item after defeating Dogma, even though the game doesn't announce it, and will therefore have a damage boost during the fight. Every player who makes it to the Ultra Harbingers will also be granted 1 Holy Mantle charge. Every Harbinger has an opening salvo of attacks that are fairly predictable. If the player can burn through the first phase with ease, it is very likely they will sustain minimal damage throughout the entire encounter. Vertical strafing is very effective against Famine. Against Pestilence, consider baiting him into firing the Poison Mortar directly in front of him so you can continue consistent damage without repositioning out of the Poison Cloud. Against War, I personally like to bait his bomb tosses high, where I'm unlikely to be hit by the blast or follow up Starburst pattern. Against Death, I don't really have much of a strategy. He tends to spawn size on top of the player model, which is just unfortunate programming. Finally, against the Beast, if the player has sufficient damage, this fight will consist of platforming between stalagmites and stalactites while maneuvering horizontally. The Beast will usually take 2 passes at most, punctuated by either a vacuum-style series of fire rings or a fireball volley. Most players will have enough damage to burst the Beast past the intermediate phases, which consist of more platforming, avoiding broken stalactites, and will proceed to the final stretch, wherein there's an infinite side scroll, eventually leading to the Beast's death. Even in our cursed no upgrades run for Samson, we ended up having enough damage via familiars to push the Beast into the grave. So don't give up hope if you fail to see a great deal of damage increasing items during your run. We cobbled together a win via Box of Friends and Mercurius. Chapter 3, What's Next? So the majority of people might be asking themselves, what would I do next if I followed this roadmap and unlocked all B-side characters? For those of you interested in fully completing Dead God and 100%ing the game, the simple answer includes the following. Beat every endgame boss with every character. At this point, You should have a vast majority of challenges unlocked, and the characters as you know them are very unlikely to be patched or changed. Tainted Jacob and Tainted Lost will probably be the most difficult characters for you to play, especially for defeating Mother, Delirium Hush, and Mega Satan. Defeat Isaac as Eden to unlock the blank card, and, if you can, defeat Delirium as the Lost to unlock the holy card for every character. Keeping your eye out for these types of game-winning combos will help plenty of winning runs on most difficult characters. Generally, getting these completion marks is the heart and soul of Binding of Isaac and will prove to be where you spend most of the game. It's also where the majority of casual players will have the most fun without feeling the grind. If you're not interested in completing Dead God, you will still greatly enjoy playing for the unlocks on both base characters and their tainted counterparts. For Dead God achievers, however, you should also play through 2 victory laps and start a 3rd, complete all the challenges, win a run without picking up hearts, bombs, or coins, and do your best to win 5 daily challenges without dying or quitting. Then, complete another 26 daily challenges. You should also at some point get a 3-win streak with 3 different characters, which may happen naturally anyway. The hard mode challenge is perhaps the toughest one in the challenges bar, and I can't really give you advice on how to beat it. It's difficult for everybody, including streamers and professional players. You can always reset the run until you happen to get a library, and pray that the library features either the Satanic Bible or the Book of Revelations. Since hearts cannot spawn normally, strategists may even suggest stacking red arts alongside regeneration such as the Leech, Pyromaniac, Placenta, or even the Mark of the Vampire. Binge Eater is a great item for this because it just takes away some of the guesswork due to Curse of the Blind. Consider going for Angel deals, as unlikely as you may be to get them, and if you must take Devil deals, consider only taking 2 HP deals if you can afford them, as they are more powerful and impactful. Good luck, you're going to need it. For your Delirium victories, it may feel excessively difficult to power through Angel deals to get the Mega Satan fight, for which there is a 50% chance the Void Portal will appear. Granted, players who make it that far will be very strong, much stronger potentially than they would be after the Hush fight. Consider this factoid, however. Players have chances to somewhat randomly see the Void Portal during each of their runs after Mom, It Lives, Isaac Satan, Blue Baby Lamb, and Mega Satan, 5, 10, 15, 20, and 50% respectively. Cumulatively, without Mega Satan, this equates to a 38.8% chance that a player in any given winning run will end up seeing the Void Portal at some point after beating one of these bosses. So my advice is this. If your run is particularly powerful by the time the Hush fight happens, and you're confident you could defeat Hush without taking serious damage while maintaining 10 plus real health, that's a good sign you might want to go ahead and try to beat Hush and force the Void Portal. Remember that beating Hush is the only way to guarantee a Void Portal. On most characters, the best items to get for Delirium include the usual combination breaks, such as 4.5 Volt and Book of Shadows, Mega Mush, Nodleaf breaks with Daddy Longlegs and Sack Dagger, and for characters with real health, things like the Wafer, Cancer, and other damage mitigation items or mid-fight health generators. While there are some cheesier ways to beat Delirium involving the Eraser, I have found this to be a very unlikely way to win against Delirium. You would have to erase a boss with the Eraser to make this happen, but hey, if you can do it, go for it. While possible though, it is much more likely in your runs, including Tainted Lost, to go for the same breaks I described above, or to simply overpower Delirium with homing granting effects, Brimstone, damage multipliers, and if possible, extra lives that spawn the player within the same boss room, such as the Soul of Lazarus, Birthright, and Inner Child. Remember that even though Lazarus's rags can revive the player within the same fight, the completion marks will go to Lazarus and not the selected character for the run. Crowd control effects are also fantastic against Delirium, specifically stun effects like Mom's Contacts and the Holy Water. Also remember that Delirium is immune to the Chaos card, and I'm also realizing as of this recording that the new D10 can reroll Fistula pieces into weaker enemies, and that probably would kill Delirium actually. We'll have to try that someday. There are a handful of achievements that happen seemingly randomly. For example, unlocking planetariums requires you to, in a single run, pick up 3 or more divination or astral themed items, like all the zodiac signs, the magic 8-ball, the crystal ball, etc. In a run, you will have to achieve 3 size-up effects, granted by items such as Magic Mush, One Makes You Larger, Leo, gaining up to 99 cents and then proceeding to spend them all in a shop visit nets you another unlock. In my opinion, some of these challenges are too specific to occur naturally, and so you may need to use a wiki to track your progress towards them or simply use Steam to track them. Perhaps most pressingly, the player will need to physically pick up every item at least once to fully realize themselves as Dead God. A few infinite item breaks can make this happen, and the good news is that these items can be picked up in greed mode, where using the D20 break is most viable. I did this very break myself while trying to get C-section, which at the time of that recording was virtually impossible to obtain naturally. In our break, I used Tainted Cane and crafted a death certificate after using the D20 to produce infinite money and consumables, and I picked up C-section in the death certificate room. If you know which items you need specifically, you can use similar greed mode breaks in combination with chaos in order to pick up effectively every item in the game, or you can wait for Dead God to occur naturally so long as you have every other facet of the save file completed. This is usually the last step for players, going through the game's collection list and taking note of which items you have not yet picked up, then physically playing runs until you can get them. Death Certificate simply makes it easier, although it is a daunting task to beat every endgame boss with every character. And that's more or less everything you need to know from that point forward to achieve Dead God. If you watch Road to B-Side from start to finish, you have my profound and unending thanks for sticking with the series. Even in the tough times, it was super fun to do this challenge, and I want to wish everyone playing this game the best of luck in achieving Dead God. This game has been near and dear to my heart, unironically helping me through very difficult times, including being bedridden during surgery, during a tough breakup, and has been the company for my misery for many years. Dead God was an achievement I had to have, and I can only hope I'm a good enough ambassador for the game. Deepest thanks to Edmund McMillan and all the creators of The Binding of Isaac for the incredible experience, mod creators for our quality of life improvements, and of course to all of you for watching. This is Percival, the Scuff Gamer, signing out. And as always, I hope you have a great day. So long, everybody.